What is up, Christian Theology fam? So we have the video about on explaining why God allows evil in this on this earth. So we're just gonna get straight to it. Make sure you hit the sub, like, and comment. All right, comment, sub, and like. Let's get straight to it. I'm not gonna waste your time. Let's get straight to it.
Or If God, Why Evil lectures,
Uh-huh.
you justify the existence of suffering with a sort of utilitarian explanation by saying that the allowance of suffering leads to a higher good. But my question is that it doesn't seem like the good in the world outweighs the suffering, that it seems like it becomes worth it in the end. Because most people who've ever existed and will ever exist are destined for hell.
First of all, how do we know that?
I guess we don't.
That would be the question. Okay, how do we know that? And then secondly, how do we know that evil that occurs in this world doesn't have good effects later in this world and even into eternity? There's no way we could know that it didn't have those effects because of the ripple effect. For those of you that were up north last night, we went through this talking about the ripple effect, right? That every event ripples forward to affect trillions of other events. And for example, I mean, just think about the ripple effects in your own life. You wouldn't be sitting here today if your parents didn't meet, and their parents didn't meet, and their parents didn't meet, right? All those ripples, just people meeting and having children, allowed us to be here today. We can't trace all those ripples, but a being outside of time and space can. So we can't say that because something evil occurs today has no ultimate good in it. There's no way of knowing whether it has good or not in it. You've just got to, you don't have the knowledge to know that. Does that make sense?
Yes. So
Okay.
let's say that only 49% of people who ever exist are saved. Do you think that would be a theological problem? Do you think that somehow in the future that it'll come out in the end where most people are saved? Because I'm saying that it seems weird. It seems like God shouldn't have created the world if most people who ever exist are destined for hell.
Why? Because what you're assuming there is a moral standard judging what God does, right? Here's something that God can't do. He can't force free creatures to do what he wants. Because if he does that, they're not free, right? If he makes them robots, then they're not loving. So in order for us to have true love and true moral choice, he has to give us free will. And if he gives us free will, it might be that even a majority of people freely decide.
Great explanation. Great explanation. God gives us free will. You decide who you want to marry. You decide when you want to have kids. You decide if you want to have kids out of wedlock. You decide if you want to kill your child. Those abortionists, you decide if you want to kill your child. You decide if you want to bomb the Eiffel Towers. You want to bomb the Twin Towers. You want to be Islam. You want to be a Muslim. You want to be Palestinian. You want to be Hamas. You want to be Israeli. Whatever it is, God gives you free will. When he gives you free will, you make your decisions. And I think it's great. I think it's really great because it's not fake. It's real love. If God knows that I gave you two options, either him or Satan, and then you pick him because you love him, you know what he is, you understand what he is, you understand the purpose of why you're here on this earth, and you choose him. I think that's how God wants it, because it's like your wife. Like, what the heck? You want to pay your wife to like you, or do you want your wife to like you for you and love you for you? It's the same thing as how God wants it. You don't want your wife to only be with you because you have money. As the other way too, you don't want your husband to only be with you because you look a certain way. That's how God sees it as well. God doesn't want you to just pick him because he's the only choice. God wants you to pick him because you love him, you're obedient to him, and you understand why you're on this earth. You're here to glorify him and to serve him, in my opinion, right? I mean, it's not in my opinion, it's like facts, right? It's facts. We are all free creatures. I could decide to not be Christian today. I could decide to be like happy in my sin and go to hell. I could decide to pick God or pick Satan. you could decide whatever you want to do. That's why women have the decisions to kill that child, even though it's life, but they still want to kill it. You know, God allows it because you chose to do it, and you're gonna reap the consequences, right? What is it? What is it saying? You sow what you reap. Let's get straight back to this.
Decide not to accept the redemption that Christ has provided. Is God obligated not to create at all because more people reject him than accept him?
Well, with utilitarianism, as far as I understand it, it's about weighing the good and the bad. So if more people go to hell, then under that ethical system, wouldn't it be considered
Well, God's
bad?
not a utilitarian. God can bring... Utilitarian is do whatever is the most good for the most people, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's smuggling in a moral law which defines what good is. Actually, I know this is going to sound a little bit odd, but if people sin and reject the salvation and they get justice for that, that's a good thing. Okay? So just because everybody isn't saved, that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. They made their choice, and they don't want Jesus. They don't want to be with God in heaven. So it's not unjust of God to punish them.
So
and as you probably know, Cole, God isn't going to punish everybody at the same level of punishment. He's going to be just in punishment. He's not going to punish an average unbeliever at the same level of punishment as, say, Hitler. You can read Luke 12 about this. It wouldn't be right. In the afterlife, nobody's going to get a raw deal. In fact, you can look at it this way. There's only two things any of us are going to get ultimately. You're either going to get justice or you're going to get grace. Which would you rather have? I don't want justice. If I get justice, I'm toast. But if I get grace and I freely accept grace, he gets the glory for that because I didn't do anything for it. He did everything for it. But if I don't accept grace, I'm getting what I deserve. And getting what I deserve is a good thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. But then why then in your If God, Why Evil lectures do you use a utilitarian explanation to justify suffering if you think that utilitarianism ultimately fails?
Well, I'm not using a utilitarianism to justify suffering. What I'm saying is that there are goods that come out of evil that we may not see, and that's why we can trust God. I'm not saying God is playing a utilitarian game. What I'm saying is that God allows free creatures to make their own choices, and he can redeem those choices even when we can't see when or how that redemption comes, because we're in this very small window of time and we can see very little.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cole.
Great answer. Great answer. Great answer. Shout out to Frank. Shout out to Frank. You guys go check his channel out. What's his name again? Cross Examined. Cross Exam. You guys go check it out. Subscribe to his channel and watch it and understand what he's saying. I think it's really beneficial for Christians to always try to learn, try to always be informed about why you're doing what you're doing. Okay? So you could help unbelievers understand what they might not be understanding. Okay? All right. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure you hit the sub and like and comment. See you on the next one. Peace.